Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am talking about self-sabotage today, and I want to offer you a different way to think about it. So, in my experience, human beings rarely ever actually try to sabotage themselves. I think that's a big misnomer. It looks like that from the outside looking in, but it's never really the case. What is actually happening is something very distinct and very different. What is actually happening is that there is a part of us that does not feel safe to take whatever action we have planned. And so that part of us is trying to protect us. Now, why does that matter? That matters because when we are not intentional, when we are not clear on whether or not we're coming from this part of us that's trying to protect us versus our highest, most intentional self, we start taking actions and creating results in the world that are not aligned with our highest values. For example, you might procrastinate putting something out there that you've been wanting to do for a long time, or you avoid setting boundaries, which leads to burnout and a bunch of other things. Or protectors sometimes lead you to have your hands in absolutely every little thing at work. And of course, you start annoying the people that you are working with because nobody wants someone that's always stepping on their toes. Or you may not make time for yourself, or you don't launch your podcast when you say you were going to launch it. You don't, you start like undercharging or overcharging for your services, which leaves you in this very same place, not creating the wealth that you desire. So that's what we want to solve for today. What we want to solve for is how do we take actions that are aligned with our values and we're not being sabotaged by what I call protectors. We don't let these protectors get in our way. So let's talk about protectors first. What are protectors? So protectors are part of us that show up to essentially keep us safe. They are the reasons why, in my experience, human species have survived for thousands of years. And from a neurobiological perspective, I think of protectors as being responsible for our negativity bias. So the human brain has a negativity bias, which is known as this neurobiological phenomenon, where the brain remembers and recalls negative things 5 times more than something positive. It makes sense, right? Because if you wanted to stay alive and you did not eat today, no big deal. You'll just eat tomorrow. But if took a wrong turn and all of a sudden, you ate a poisonous berry or you died that day because you got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, you definitely don't want that to happen. So you can definitely avoid the carrot. You can have the carrot tomorrow, but not the stick. And so the brain is constantly scanning the world around us every 5 to 7 seconds, it's essentially looking for something that's dangerous around us. And that is essentially how protectors have come to be. They are part of us that have been created to keep us safe, but they're also a bit one-dimensional. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is they don't have the skill to discern when they are actually needed. When do we need them to show up and protect us? So what I want to talk about is how protectors have come to be popularized kind of in the Western psychology world, but also their indigenous roots, where they've come from before that, how they get in the way for us, and then what you can start doing now to essentially ensure you are coming from your highest self and not a protector. Okay, so this concept of protectors was popularized in Western psychology by Dr. Richard Schwartz in the 1980s through his theory of IFS called internal family systems. However, this practice is not new and it has very beautiful roots in indigenous healing. So, Richard Schwartz's model is based on this idea that we all have these different parts within us, like these inner voices that remember emotional wounds and try to protect us. For example, if you got slapped on the wrist when you tried to steal an extra cookie when you were a kid, you're probably going to harness that inside of you. And every time there's an extra cookie, you might be cautious. You might not want to take it. So protectors can show up and they can either be proactive, like a perfectionist who's trying to protect us from being judged and feeling the feeling of shame. So they can be proactive. And this is where, so if you experience anxiety, for example, this is a proactive protector trying to protect you by always giving you everything you need for the future. Think ahead, think ahead, think ahead. That's how a proactive protector can show up. However, they can also be reactive. Reactive protectors show up whenever, let me give you an example. They show up when we're really upset and we blow up at somebody or we yell at a team member because we're stressed. So it could be reactive or it could be proactive. And at the core of all of us, so we have these protectors, proactive protectors, reactive protectors, but at the core of all of us, we have a part of us that's kind and compassionate and wise. It's like our inner sage or our inner divine. So I'll use those two terms interchangeably, our inner sage or our inner divine. That is our highest self. And again, though Schwartz's work brought this into the Western world in the 80s, this concept is not new. And in fact, it mirrors many indigenous healing modalities. For example, there are some indigenous traditions that hold that humans are not singular, but rather they're multifaceted beings. So we are not just one thing, we are tripartite, we are spiritual, emotional. There's parts of us that are relational, for example. And in the Andean communities, so the indigenous Peruvian communities in the Andes, they teach about this inner world that's populated by Aini. Aini are these reciprocal spirits or energies that have to be in balance. And when we are out of balance, when we are out of ease, we fall into dis-ease, which is a result of imbalance between all of these forces, very similar to how IFS frames the conflict between these inner parts of us. The Lakota tribes also refer to this sense of council of selves, a concept where there's many aspects of ourselves. There's a wounded child, a protector, but there's also a wise elder. And so they acknowledge something very, very similar. And IFS identifies this sense of self. So the self, capital S, SELF, is the calm part of us, the curious, the part of us that has clarity and compassion. So that is what I call our inner divine or our inner sage. And many indigenous teachings have also pointed to this inherent inner wisdom or spirit that can also heal us. So in the ancient traditions that I come from, the Mesoamerican traditions, there's a belief of something called tonali. Tonali is life energy, and teolia. Teolia is the heart's soul. Tonali and teolia, they guide us. They guide ourselves. When these are being honored and aligned, that's when we experience the deepest level of alignment to our values and to our highest self. And in curanderismo, which is the Mexican or many Latin American healing traditions, the entire concept of curanderismo, of these healing traditions, is that what we are actually doing is guiding everyone back to their truest essence, guiding everybody home, guiding everybody to their capital SELF, guiding everybody back to their self, kind of like an IFS. So very similar, very aligned practices here and words when it comes to IFS and these indigenous practices. So indigenous healing traditions often, they do not pathologize the emotions. And I think that's really, really, really important. And in fact, in IFS, Richard Schwartz says there are no bad parts. There are no parts of us that are bad. In fact, in indigenous healing, as well as in IFS, we are taught to respect all parts of us, to see all the parts of us as sacred messengers. And this is especially important when it comes to anger, grief, rage, or fear. Rage, especially important, especially if you're coming from a marginalized community, if you are a person of color, if you are a woman, there might be some rage you might have to be with to really, and rage again is never the problem, just like none of these emotions are the problem. They are just sacred messengers. What are they here to teach us? Maybe that we are not okay with the injustice that, our ancestors experienced. And so no bad parts, I think, is one of the most important things here for you to take away, is that none of the parts that are showing up to protect us, there's nothing wrong with them. They're all these beautiful sacred messengers. And many traditions see all of these as spirits or energies that we're here to honor. We're not here to suppress them, we're here to honor them through storytelling, through rituals, through ceremonies. And often all of those things allow us to witness this landscape, this internal landscape inside of us to help us bring harmony. Very similar to the practice in IFS, internal family systems, that is called unburdening, where we get to unburden those parts of us that have been scared, afraid, and they show up stronger to protect us. So IFS focuses on individual healing, and one difference between IFS and indigenous healing modalities is that though IFS focuses on individual healing, in indigenous healing modalities, they sort of focus on the collective. And I think that's really, really, really important to name because Indigenous healing adds a very important layer. And that's the layer that has become more popular recently, which is that the parts of the self that are also connected to the land, to our community, and to our ancestors, which means that there are parts of us that when we are showing up with protectors, that may have been something that maybe I didn't live or I didn't experience, but it was an ancestral trauma or a generational trauma, which means that some of our protectors are showing up, again, not because of what happened to us, but because of what may have happened to our ancestors or our land or our communities. And many indigenous healing modalities including the ones that I practice with my clients, they see that when we aim to heal ourselves, what we are doing is we are restoring both a sense of peace within ourselves individually, but also a larger sense of peace, a collective sense of peace that's sometimes cosmic and ancestral. And it's this beautiful balance so that when we heal ourselves, we're not just healing ourselves. What we are able to offer is healing to all of the generations that came before us that did not have the luxury, the space, the time, the safety, the freedom to do this work for themselves, and all of the generations that are coming after us. And I think that this is especially true when I work with my clients to heal wounds around time scarcity or money scarcity, because time scarcity and money scarcity, those things are real. They were real. They were real things that affected the people that came before us, where there was no time, there was no freedom, there was so much trauma, financial trauma, and trauma around time being stolen away from you, never letting it be your own. And so when we heal those wounds, it's powerful work. We're doing it for ourselves, we're liberating ourselves from that, but we are also doing it for the generations before us and the generations after us. This means that you don't pass down time scarcity to your children or to your children's children. It's powerful stuff. So the language between IFS and indigenous modalities might be a bit different. You know, IFS talks about parts instead of the concept of spirit or energies. And IFS uses the word self, so to mean your inner divine or your inner sage, whereas indigenous modalities usually use the word soul. The essence of these healings is essentially the same, where we get to witness and heal all of our parts. And when we do that, we tend to reconnect to our wholeness, our inner divine, and our deepest ancestral wisdom. Okay, so let's go on here and talk about what to do once you start noticing that your so-called self-sabotage is actually a protector that is keeping you safe. So how do you know when a protector is present? So often it's in these moments where your behavior is not aligning with your deepest value or your goals. This can look like, you know that you are supposed to be setting boundaries because you know they're the right thing to do, but you're not doing it. You're having a tough time setting boundaries. Or you know you're supposed to put out a new offer that you offer to your audience, but you're procrastinating on putting that out there, even though you've already promised it. Or you're saying yes to a project at work, or you're saying yes to a client, even though you know you're not totally aligned and now you're feeling resentful. Or you're micromanaging your team, even though you know you want to trust them because there's a part of you that's afraid that they're good, that you might fail. So all of these little things, these are not just habits. They're not just personality quirks. They're not us sabotaging ourselves. These are our parts, our protectors doing their job. These are our protectors doing their job. So why would our protectors show up? So let's talk about that example with the procrastinating and putting your offer out there. Maybe you're procrastinating because your protector is afraid that if you put it out, it might not be good enough yet. And so you hold on to it. Or if you put it out, you might get somebody upset. This is the biggest reason why we hold off on setting the boundaries we want to set, is because we are so afraid that the boundaries we set might not be safe to set. We may not be entitled to set them. What if we set that boundary and we get somebody really mad, or somebody, is disappointed in us? All of these reasons are why our protectors show up. So what do we do? So I want to share with you a sort of high level process, or it's a simple but kind of high level overview of what I guide my clients through. And I want to share this with you because I want you to start playing with this on your own and practicing this. But before I do, I use the word simple. And when we start working with our protectors, it's never really that easy. So it's one of those things that's simple, but not easy. Because if it was easy, you would already be doing this for yourself. You wouldn't need this podcast episode today. So these things are one of those things. Yeah, it can be simple. It's like boundaries. The concept is simple, but why is it so hard? It's because it's one of those things that's simple, but not easy. So the protectors we carry, they've been with us for years, and many of them for generations and generations. We've inherited some of them. And sometimes this armor that we have, that we've put on, when we don't have it, life does not feel safe. And it's not always obvious when our protectors are running the show, because for many high functioning, high performing folks, your protectors haven't just helped you survive, they have helped you be successful in life. And so sometimes it's really hard to differentiate between a protector versus our highest, most authentic self. And here is the truth, that what got you to this level of success right here, right now, today, will likely not get you to your next level of success, because you cannot create your most aligned, liberated, powerful life from a place of protectors. You can only do that from your highest self, from your inner divine, from your inner sage. And this is the work that I do with all of my clients, not because any of them need fixing, but because they are finally ready to lead from who they really are, to show up and create their lives from their highest self, not from their protectors. And once you start practicing this, once you start witnessing, honoring, and unblending, which means like really distancing yourself from your protector, you begin to feel more at peace. You have more clarity. You have more courage. And you start to notice that you are no longer getting in your own way. It's so interesting. When my mom was still alive, she was a mayor of a town in Central California. And I was so lucky because I had the opportunity to interview her on my podcast. And this was my first podcast. It's called The Empowered Brain. There's about 180 episodes if you're interested. I think the interview with her is in like episode 30 or something like that. And one of the things she said that I thought was so powerful, because my mom did not have a college degree, and she didn't come from, a history of being like a politician for a living. She was just 100% committed to being in service to her community. And she was always out there doing the right thing for her people. And when she ran for mayor, she motivated so many first-time voters to come out to vote for her, because they knew that she was speaking truth. Like, what she said was what you were going to get, because they knew her and they had seen her doing her work. And so I asked her when I was interviewing her, I said, Mom, what do you think was one of your biggest barriers? And she started laughing. And my mom was like in her 60s. By the way, my mom died of stage 4 breast cancer about a year ago. And when I did this interview with her, she was the sitting mayor busting her butt. And when I was scheduling the interview with her, she's like, "Oh, let's schedule it next Tuesday between this and this time." I'm like, "All right, how come?" She's like, "Because I'll be getting chemo and I'll just be sitting there getting chemo. It's the perfect time to do the interview." So when I interviewed her, she was literally in the infusion clinic getting her chemotherapy for her cancer. What an incredible woman she was. Anyway, but when I asked her, what is one of your biggest barriers? You know what she said to me? She said, the biggest barrier is always myself. It's I get in my own way. And she said, for all of those that are listening, when you can see and you can stop getting in your own way, everything just becomes so much easier. And that is exactly this work. That is exactly this work. When you can see your protectors for who they are, when you can honor them, when you can witness them, when you can love them, and you can unblend yourself from them, everything gets so much easier. Your success gets easier. The teams you're leading gets easier. Your businesses start to thrive. You start to thrive in a way that you did not realize that was possible for you. And that is why when our protectors show up, we don't want to shame them because we're just shaming ourselves. And that doesn't lead to a good outcome. We want to thank them for keeping us safe. And then we want to say, okay, we're okay. So I'm going to walk you through step by step one of the ways that I help my clients unblend or witness their protectors. Okay. And again, I know these things are not easy, but sometimes, I want you to just have this tool for yourself. Keep it in your back pocket. Maybe start to practice it. Okay. So, step one is when you are feeling stuck, when you are feeling reactive, avoidant, when you are over controlling, this is your opportunity to pause and notice. So, step one is pause and notice. Take a breath and ask yourself, what part of me is showing up right now? And it might sound like, this is the part of me that's really afraid I'm going to fail publicly. Or this is the part of me that's learned to stay really invisible as a kid so that nobody would criticize me. Or this is the part of me that feels safer controlling everything instead of letting go. So naming these parts of you gives you space from that part. And it reminds you that you are not that behavior. You are your highest self, your inner divine. You are your inner sage. You have so much more wisdom behind all of it. Okay, so that's step one, pause and notice. Step two, offer yourself curiosity and compassion. Rather than judging yourself for procrastinating, for yelling, for overworking, rather than shaming yourself for being at a place of burnout again, try offering yourself curiosity. So it might sound something like, what is this protector afraid would happen if I didn't step in to control everything? Or when did this strategy first really start helping me? Or what is this protector trying to tell me? So you're not excusing the behavior. In fact, what you're actually doing is you're allowing yourself to witness the behavior. And when you allow yourself to witness, you are listening to the wisdom. Our protectors are messengers. They're here to give us a message, and you get to listen to that wisdom. And that alone begins the process of unburdening yourself from the protectors, the witnessing piece. And when you can witness from a place of curiosity and objectivity, that in itself is an act of compassion. That in itself is an act of self-compassion. Okay, step three. Once you understand the role that your protector is playing, then you can start leading from your highest self, that calm part of you, the clear, compassionate, centered part of you. So, step three is you thank that part of you for showing up, and then you choose to lead. So, it might sound something like, thank you for trying to protect me. I see you. I've got this now. Or, you don't have to carry this job anymore. You did a really good job. I'm okay. I've got it now. So it's really powerful. Step one, you pause and notice. Step two, bring curiosity and compassion. Step three, you thank that part of you for showing up, for trying to protect you. And then you release it and you let yourself lead from your highest self. So I'm going to give you a real world example of how this showed up for one of my clients recently. So a client of mine, this brilliant CEO, kept jumping in on all of his team's projects. He was redoing things at the very last minute and waiting for deadlines before he would say yes or no to things. And the team was understandably very frustrated. And of course, he was exhausted. He was exhausted because he was always doing all the work for the team, always doing more. And when he and I paused to look at what part of him was showing up, he identified this part of himself that was hyper responsible, this hyper responsible protector part that developed when he was 12 years old and had to try to keep his family all together through a ton of childhood chaos that he experienced. And once he saw that, everything shifted for him. He didn't just stop micromanaging overnight, he stopped believing that his behavior was his truth, that that's just who I am, that's just the way I am. And he started relating to it. He started being kind and compassionate to it. And over time, with some support, he began leading from his highest self. And that created a team that was running on its own. It created more time for himself. It gave him so much time back, which allowed his marriage to get stronger. He was more present with his kids. It's beautiful waterfall effect that shows up for you that can happen when you heal these little parts. Okay. So we covered a lot today, and I'm going to wrap up. And here's what I want to leave you with. So, if this episode brought something up for you, if you're thinking, wow, maybe I might not be sabotaging myself, maybe I've just been protecting myself all along, I want you to hold that insight with just some really kind gentleness, because you don't have to have it all figured out today. This work of noticing, of naming, of creating compassion for your protectors, this is a lifelong practice. And it's one that requires a lot of gentleness, some curiosity, and sometimes some guidance. And while it might feel really clunky or unclear at first, over time, it becomes this beautiful path back to your highest self, back to your highest essence, your inner divine, your sage. It becomes your pathway back to you. And here's why this matters so deeply, especially if you are a leader or you're an entrepreneur. Because when you are being run by a protector, whether it's your perfectionist self, your overachiever, the people pleasing part of you, the avoidant part of you, you are not coming from clarity. You are being reactive. You're managing your fears. You are not creating your visions. So you might get results, but they come at a cost. They come at the cost of your peace, of your authenticity, of your relationships, and your sustainability. And when you do this work of learning to witness and befriend your protectors, you start to lead from your highest self. And from that place, you access calm, you access discernment, creativity, your true authentic power. You make decisions that are aligned with your highest self, with your deepest values. You build a business that supports your wholeness, not one that demands your sacrifice. And you become the kind of leader that people trust, that people follow, that people are transformed by. So, yes, this healing is incredibly personal, but it is also profoundly strategic. This is how you make sure you are living from your deepest, highest truth, and that your leadership and your businesses are reflecting that. Your internal leadership is your greatest business asset. And this is just another way that you strengthen that. This is another path towards self mastery. And if you're ready to go deeper on this and you want support doing this work in real time, I would be honored to walk you through that and guide you along the way. This is the work I do with my clients every day. It's tender, it's powerful, it creates transformative results that ripples through not just their life, but through the generations after. All right, sweet friends, we covered a lot of stuff today. Thank you again for being here. If this resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you shared it with someone who would benefit from today. Don't forget to subscribe and, of course, leave us a review. That's how other people can find us. All right, sweet friends, until next time, adios.